the so-called peacekeeper of Europe, who also went by the name Edward the Caresser before making any judgments. You might want to hear the twisted specifics of his secret chamber in a Parisian bordello. His legendary craving wasn't limited to cuisine, it extended to women, and his scandalous lineage still ties his mistresses to today's British royal bloodline. You're about to step into the lavish, outrageous, and absolutely jaw-dropping universe of Britain's most lustful monarch. This is the tale of King Edward VII, a man so fond of bodily pleasures that he had an erotic apparatus built, letting him indulge with numerous partners simultaneously. We'll explain how that mechanism functioned in all its indulgent glory, but it's just say Edward didn't bother to conceal his urges. He had no fewer than 50 confirmed mistresses, and his most cherished was Alice Keppel, who, in an ironic twist, just so happens to be the great-grandmother of Camilla, Queen Consort to King Charles III. Edward's affairs didn't just stir scandal, they caused chaos, shattered marriages, tainted reputations, and a monarchy constantly teetering on humiliation. During his 1901 coronation, he even invited his mistresses to Westminster Abbey, giving them a dedicated pew specifically for the king's women. And you thought the modern royals were outrageous. Born on November 9, 1841, inside Buckingham Palace, Edward was the eldest offspring of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. At birth, he inherited titles such as Duke of Cornwall, Duke of Rothesay, Prince of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, and Duke of Saxony. His parents hoped he would become a flawless constitutional ruler. They subjected him to a grueling academic regimen, tutors, books, non-stop studying, but Edward despised education. Where he truly shined was in charisma, humor, and diplomacy. Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli once described him as informed, sharp, and kind-hearted. But his parents didn't care. They were enraged by his academic failures. Even worse, Victoria held him responsible for Prince Albert's death. Why? Because shortly before Albert succumbed to typhoid, he stormed out in the rain to scold Edward over a fling with an actress. Some believed that confrontation pushed him over the edge, with no real royal duties, and the burden of his father's death hanging over him. Edward plunged into a life of indulgence, food, alcohol, gambling, and women. So many women, in fact, that he became infamous for it and had decades to enjoy his reputation. Queen Victoria reigned for 63 years, making Edward wait until he was 59 before becoming king. As both prince and monarch, Edward was fixated on two things, food and sex. In that order, his reign, from 1901 to 1910, left most governance to others, freeing him to indulge in his real passions. He earned the nickname Dirty Bertie, and it was well deserved. He lost his virginity to a professional actress when he was just 19 and serving in the British Army in Ireland. Fellow officers, realizing the prince hadn't yet had his first sexual experience, did what any honorable 19th century gentleman would do. They smuggled an actress into his bedroom. That actress was Nellie Clifton, and Edward, then known as Bertie, left Ireland as a changed man. His parents were livid. His father, Prince Albert, dragged him for a long, cold walk in the rain to confront him. Days later, Albert died and Queen Victoria forgave him. Desperate to reform her son, Victoria arranged a marriage between Edward and Princess Alexandra of Denmark. They had only met twice before their wedding, but eventually they formed a bond. Alexandra bore him 6 children, 5 of whom survived infancy. Their eldest son, Albert Victor, died tragically at age 28. A sculpture was erected in his memory at St. George's Chapel, a solemn monument of grief in the midst of Edward's extravagant lifestyle. Though he had a wife, Paris was Edward's true love. In 1864, the 23-year-old prince visited the French capital and became enamored with its brothels. Aristocrats concluded their evenings in high-end Parisian pleasure houses, but Edward reserved his own suite at the elite Les Charbonniers years in advance. He even had a tub filled with champagne for his most decadent encounters. Over time, his indulgence ballooned literally. He put on weight fast, but his growing belly didn't stop his appetite. In 1890, he had a special contraption built, love chair, or siège de mule, designed by French furniture maker Louis Saubrier. This wasn't mere furniture, it was a mechanical invention that let Edward recline while his lovers did the work, engaging with multiple partners without his weight being an obstacle. Some say it allowed him to stand while others crouched or lay down. Others claimed it adjusted for various positions. Either way, it was a throne for lust, and it stayed in his private room, let Chabanais, 4 years. Edward's long roster of mistresses began with Lily Langtry, a mesmerizing actress from Jersey, who quickly became his first serious romantic obsession. For 3 intense years, they were inseparable until things fell apart when Langtry became pregnant, though the child likely wasn't Edward's. After Langtry came Daisy Brooke, a stunning society hostess married to Lord Brooke. Despite her noble standing, Daisy and Edward had a steamy affair that lasted 9 scandal-filled years. Their relationship wasn't about love, it was shared amusement. Their antics became the source of hushed whispers among the elite, but it was Alice Keppel who became his most notorious partner. She entered Edward's life in 1898 when he was 56 and she just 29. Unlike the others, Alice wasn't directly paid. Edward gave her shares in a rubber company, lifting her to a lifestyle akin to royalty. Their relationship surpassed the physical. Alice became a trusted advisor, political go-between, and court fixture. She even held his hand as he lay dying. Alice wasn't just a lover, she was a strategist. She passed messages between Edward and his ministers and played a quiet, yet critical role in governance. On his deathbed in 1910, Alexandra even permitted Alice to be present. But once Edward passed, Alice's grief was so loud and uncontrollable that she had to be removed from the room. Afterward, she and her family fled Britain. The rest of his mistresses came and went, roughly 50 in all. King Edward VII lived for extravagance. His meals were as epic as his romantic pursuits. A normal day included a 5-course breakfast, a 10-course lunch, a 12-course dinner, tea packed with cakes and finger foods, and a bedtime supper, more cakes and meat pies. At the opera, he insisted on hour-long intermissions so he could snack on cold trout and pastries in his private box. His favorite tea was a special blend by Fortnum and Mason, prepared just for him. The royal kitchens ran like a 5-star restaurant for a man whose hunger knew no limits. Edward wasn't just a monarch, he was an empire of excess. A ruler who didn't wield influence through warfare or politics, but by unrestrained indulgence. His cravings rocked the rigid values of Victorian society and redefined the image of the British monarchy. And yes, he really did own that infamous love chair.